A billionaire's car breaks down in the middle of a storm, but what happens next has nothing to do with engines and everything to do with a little girl who asks one question that changes a mechanic's life forever. When a dusty old blueprint meets a child's unshakable hope, the world watches something impossible happen, and it all starts in the unlikeliest of places. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to know. Now let's jump into the story. The storm rolled over Pinebrook like a freight train made of clouds. Thunder rattled loose shutters and sent stray dogs searching for dry porches. Inside Merritt's garage, Hugo Merritt wiped his forehead with a rag that used to be a concert shirt. He was 54, broad at the shoulders, and worn thin everywhere else. Long hours under hoods had bent his back the way years bend an old mailbox. Still, he kept the lights on, even if one flickered like it had doubts. Rain slapped the tin roof so hard it sounded like someone emptying pockets full of coins. Hugo liked storms. They drowned out the groan of the aging radio and the sigh buzzing in his own head. Business had been slow all month. Yesterday, he had traded a brake job for a basket of fresh eggs. He was good with that. Eggs didn't bounce. At noon, the power blinked, surrendered, and left the garage in dusky gray. Hugo fetched a lantern, its glow turning raindrops on the window into beads of gold. He slid under a rust-speckled Chevy, coaxing a stubborn bolt that refused to quit. It was almost free when gravel crunched outside. Car door slammed soft, expensive, confident. Nobody with money stopped here unless they were lost or desperate. Hugo rolled out and saw it, a deep blue Aston Harris V12, sleek as a river stone. Water streamed off its hood in silver streaks. The driver's door opened, and a tall woman stepped out, balancing a pale umbrella against the wind. Her coat looked like it had a taste for boardrooms, not mud. Beside her climbed a girl, maybe 7, hands white-knuckled on a pastel walker. The walker squeaked once on the wet gravel, a tiny sound swallowed by rain. Hugo scrubbed grease from his palms, though grease never fully left. "Afternoon, ma'am," he said, voice calm, curious. "Storm catch you?" The woman nodded, lips tight. "Engine cut out 3 miles back. The dealership won't answer. Sheriff said you're the only mechanic on this stretch." Her tone carried equal parts relief and doubt, like she wasn't sure a place with a leaning sign and busted neon deserved an Aston Harris. Hugo offered a gentle smile. "Name's Hugo. We'll figure it out." He gestured toward the open bay, where water pooled in concrete cracks. "I'm Delilah Crane," she replied, shifting her grip on the umbrella. "And this is my daughter, Tess." Tess looked up, eyes wide as fresh leaves. Rain freckled her cheeks, yet she didn't blink. She let go of the walker with one hand to wave small, brave, and quick. Hugo felt something settle in his chest, a weight and a warmth all at once. He popped the Aston's hood. The engine was a polished cathedral of parts, but the problem was simple: a failed ignition coil. 10 minutes with an old coil from a Shelby replica, and the motor coughed, then purred, steady and strong. Hugo shut the hood and tapped it twice, a habit he'd never broken. "Try her now," he said. Delilah slid behind the wheel, turned the key, and the car answered with low thunder. She stepped out, surprise softening her face. "Already?" "Already," he echoed. "Ignition coil. Easy fix." Tess inched forward on her walker, stopping where rain met dry floor. Her gaze drifted from the glowing lantern to the jars of bolts lining the wall. "Do you only fix cars?" she asked, voice bright as rain on metal. Hugo crouched until their eyes met. "Mostly," he said. "What? Once built a go-kart from a lawnmower. Why do you ask?" She tapped the walker with her thumb. "Could you fix legs?" The question landed, like a dropped wrench. Rain kept drumming, but for a second Hugo heard only his pulse. He glanced at Delilah. The mother's shoulders stiffened, protective. Hugo lowered his voice. "I can't mend legs," he said, "but maybe I can build something that helps them work better." Delilah cleared her throat, pulling a slim wallet. Crisp bills peeked out like pale leaves. "How much do we owe?" she asked. Hugo shook his head. "Call it a favor. Stormy night, empty road. Sometimes a handout isn't a charity, it's good manners. She hesitated, unused to refusals. Finally, she tucked the wallet away. "Thank you," she said, voice softer. Tess beamed. "He's nice." Hugo watched mother and daughter ease into the Aston. Before closing the door, Tess twisted round. "You talk to me like I'm tall," she said. "Because you are," he replied. Taillights vanished into rain. Hugo leaned against the workbench, feeling the echo of Tess's question vibrating through the room. Years ago, he reminded himself. He had drawn sketches, spring-loaded braces made from spare shocks and lightweight rails. Doctors laughed at barnyard engineering, parts gathered dust, the storm eased, but sleep felt distant. Hugo rummaged behind a stack of old carburetors until his fingers found a rolled blueprint stained with coffee. He spread it under lantern light, tracing faded lines. Outside, moonlight slipped between clouds, striking puddles like tiny mirrors. He selected a length of aluminum, clean and straight. Sparks soon flew as he cut, the hiss of the grinder joining the storm's retreating growl. Each spark felt like a small promise, lighting dark corners. Perhaps one walker could become two braced legs. Perhaps help didn't need a hospital logo to be real. By dawn, the rain had stopped. Steam rose from the asphalt. In the corner first, pieces of a brace rested on a rag, shining like early sun. Hugo stretched aching shoulders and smiled at the neon sign flickering over the door. Only half the letters worked. But one word burned steady. Open. 3 days had passed since the storm, but the feeling it left behind stayed with Hugo Merritt. He couldn't stop thinking about Tess and her question. Could you fix legs? It echoed in his mind, louder than the thunder that had rolled over Pinebrook that afternoon. He had heard many things in his life, but nothing quite like that. It wasn't just a question. It was a challenge. It was hope in a child's voice. Inside his small garage, Hugo didn't rest. Instead of fixing cars, he cleared the long-forgotten backbench where old tools, rusted bolts, and unused parts had gathered dust. In the middle of the clutter, he unrolled a drawing he made years ago. It showed a pair of leg braces designed to support weak muscles and joints, powered by simple springs and shock absorbers. The idea had come to him after watching a documentary, but life had pushed it aside like so many things now. He brought it back to life. Hugo cut aluminum strips, shaped them carefully, and used small shocks from an old dirt bike. He stitched padding from an old seatbelt and used flexible straps for a snug fit. Each part was chosen with care, not for looks, but for purpose. This wasn't about making something fancy. It was about giving a little girl a shot at walking without a walker. After 72 hours and very little sleep, the first version of what Hugo decided to call the Cloudstriders sat on the workbench. They looked almost too simple, but Hugo believed in them. They were light, sturdy, and flexible. Most of all, they were made with someone special in mind. Just as he tightened the last screw, the familiar crunch of tires on gravel made him look up. The deep blue Aston Harris rolled into the driveway again. Hugo wiped his hands and stepped out to meet Delilah Crane and her daughter Tess. The sky was clear, the air calm like the world had paused for something important. Delilah stepped out, sunglasses hiding any emotion. Tess climbed down with her walker as before. But this time, Hugo was ready. "Miss Crane," Hugo said politely, "I built something for Tess. Something that might help." Delilah raised an eyebrow. "You built something?" "Yes, ma'am," Hugo said, guiding them inside. "It's a brace. It supports the legs, helps with balance and movement. It's not a cure, but maybe a start." Tess looked at the silver braces sitting on the stool like treasures waiting to be claimed. Her eyes lit up. "Those are for me? Only if you want?" "To try," Hugo replied, crouching to meet her eye again. "They won't hurt, I promise." Delilah looked hesitant. "We've seen doctors tried all kinds of devices. None of them worked." "Well," Hugo said with a gentle smile, "those doctors didn't know Tess." Tess nodded eagerly. "I want to try." With care, Hugo helped her out of her walker and into the braces. He checked every strap, adjusted the hinges, and tightened the buckles just enough for support without discomfort. "Okay," he said quietly. "Let's try one step." Tess hesitated. Her fingers twitched slightly. Then, with her jaw set like someone twice her age, she moved one foot forward. The spring-loaded brace absorbed the weight and pushed gently back, helping her shift balance. Then she moved the second foot. Delilah gasped and clutched the nearby workbench. "She's walking." Hugo didn't speak. His throat was too tight. Instead, he kept close, ready to steady her if needed. But Tess didn't fall. She laughed instead, light, loud and free. She took another step, then another dot, in the middle of a dusty garage with cracked floors and oil stains. A little girl walked without a walker for the first time in her life. Tears filled Delilah's eyes. She knelt beside Tess and pulled her into a hug. "You did it?" She whispered. "No," Tess said proudly. "We did it." Delilah turned to Hugo, voice trembling. "You built this?" Hugo nodded. "Years ago. We just never had a reason to finish it." "This could help so many kids," she said, her voice a mix of wonder and disbelief. Hugo looked down at the tools in his hands. "I'm just a mechanic. I fix things." "You didn't just fix something," Delilah said. "You gave her something. No one else could." They left later that afternoon, Tess, still wearing the braces. She waved as they pulled out of the lot, leaving behind tracks in gravel and something more invisible but far more important: a spark. That evening, Hugo sat on his back porch as the sun dipped below pine trees. For years he'd fixed engines, brakes, and belts. He'd never imagined it could fix hope. But now he knew better. Inside the garage, a second set of braces sat half-built on the bench. He stared at them, then picked up a wrench. Because once you help one person stand, you realize the world is full of others waiting for someone to believe. They can dot the news of Tess walking without her walker spread through Pinebrook faster than a brush fire in dry grass. One video clip, just 45 seconds of her giggling and taking shaky steps in Hugo Merritt's garage, found its way onto social media. Within hours, people across the country were talking about the Cloudstriders. The strange name Hugo had scribbled on a sticky note and stuck to the side of his workbench. He never imagined anyone outside town would care, and now it seemed like everyone did. A few days later, a black SUV pulled up outside the garage. Hugo, in the middle of changing a truck's oil, wiped his hands on a shop rag as the doors opened. Out stepped Delilah Crane, looking more relaxed than usual, followed by a man in a tailored suit carrying a briefcase. "Hugo," Delilah said, "meet Jonas Frey. He's with Crane Medical. I told him about the braces." Jonas offered a polite smile. Miss Crane shared the video. "Our team was stunned. We'd like to help you take this further funding, testing, maybe even production. We believe the Cloudstriders could change lives." Hugo raised an eyebrow. "I'm not a scientist or a businessman. I'm just a guy with tools." "That's fine," Jonas said. "We're looking for results, not titles." That week, the garage transformed. Engineers came in with clipboards, laptops, and boxes of shiny parts. Hugo's corner workbench became a center of innovation. People asked questions, took measurements, and sometimes talked too fast for Hugo to keep up. But every now and then, Tess would drop by after school, swearing her braces and handing out high fives like candy. She reminded Hugo why he was doing this. Testing began at a nearby children's hospital. The first child to try the updated version of the Cloudstriders was a quiet boy named Luis, who had never walked without two adults supporting him. His mother stood near the window, gripping the edge of her coat. With the braces on, Luis took one step, then another. By the third, the entire room burst into tears and cheers. Word traveled fast. More families signed up for trials. Local news crews arrived. Soon national media came calling too. Hugo found himself in interviews talking into microphones while still wearing his stained garage apron. One reporter called him the barefoot inventor. Hugo didn't correct her, even though he always wore boots. But with attention came pressure. One morning, Hugo received a letter in a thick envelope from a company called Apex Mobility. The paper inside was full of legal words, but the message, it was clear: stop building the braces or face a lawsuit. Apex had a competing product still in development and didn't like being outpaced by a small-town mechanic. Hugo showed the letter to Delilah. She read it twice, then folded it neatly and slid it into her bag. "They're just trying to scare us," she said. "And they're nervous. That means we're onto something." Still, the warning weighed on Hugo's mind. What if he'd done something wrong? What if his simple invention became tangled in rules and red tape? At night, he found it hard to sleep. Kept going, but the joy started to feel thinner. One afternoon, during a team meeting, the Cloud Striders failed a test. A part bent under stress, and a safety strap tore loose. Everyone froze. Hugo walked over, examined the damage, and nodded slowly. "It broke where we didn't reinforce the knee." "That's my fault," he said calmly. "But now we know where it needs to be better." No one argued. No one blamed him. Instead, the team went back to the blueprints and started redesigning. Dr. Avani Roy, the lead orthopedic specialist working on the project, patted Hugo on the shoulder afterward. "You're not just building braces," she said. "Building trust, and trust needs testing." The next version of the Cloud Striders was stronger and lighter, made from new materials that Hugo had never even heard of before. He didn't pretend to know everything, but he knew how to pay attention. And he asked questions even if they made him feel slow. Learning, he decided, was just another kind of tool. Apex Mobility sent another warning letter. This time Hugo didn't even open it. Instead, he taped it to the back of a filing cabinet and wrote "Not today" across it in red marker by the end of the month. The first small batch of Cloud Striders was sent to different clinics across the state. Kids in wheelchairs tried them. Some cried, some laughed. All of them stood a little taller. One evening, Tess visited Hugo's garage with a surprise. She handed him a tiny screw tied to a red string. "This one came loose on my old walker," she said. "But I always kept it. It's lucky. Now it's yours." Hugo held the screw like it was made of gold. "Thanks, kiddo," he said, tying it around his neck. Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees. Inside, Hugo stood surrounded by tools, parts, and people who believed in him. The trials weren't over, but neither was the dream. They had work to do. Real work. Important work. And for the first time in a long time, Hugo felt like he wasn't just fixing things. He was building something that could never be broken. Spring came early to Pinebrook that year. Trees stretched green arms to the sky, and birds filled the air with songs that sounded like celebration. But the biggest change wasn't the weather, it was the steady hum of hope coming from a hillside just past the old train tracks. There, on land that used to be overgrown with weeds and wildflowers, something new was taking shape, the Cloud Strider Institute. The building wasn't fancy, no marble floors or gold signs, but it was full of sunlight, open rooms, and tools lined up like soldiers on a mission. At the center of it all stood Hugo Merritt, the same man who once fixed old trucks for egg baskets and rusty smiles. Now he wore a name tag that read Director. He laughed when he first saw it, thinking someone was playing a joke. But no one was laughing. They were all looking to him. The idea for the Institute had come from Delilah Crane, of course. After months of working together, she knew Hugo didn't want fame or flash. He wanted a place where real work could happen, a space where mechanics, doctors, and dreamers could build the next version of Cloud Striders and test them in real dash time. Kids from all over the country started arriving with parents and wide eyes. Some had never taken a step on their own. Some had almost given up trying. But every child came with a spark, and Hugo, with his steady hands and kind eyes, helped turn those sparks into steady steps. On opening day, the whole town showed up. Even Mayor Blake, who once said Hugo's garage was an eyesore, stood at the front of the crowd, clapping the loudest. Delilah gave a short speech. Then Tess, now 8 and walking stronger than ever, took the stage. "This place exists because one question met one answer," Tess said. "Keep asking big questions." And she turned to Hugo and handed him a small wooden box. "Open it," she whispered. Inside was a screw, her lucky screw. The one from her old walker now, tied to a chain, so you always remember where this started, she said. Hugo didn't cry often, but he felt something shift behind his eyes. Not sadness, not even joy. Something deeper. Maybe pride. A few weeks later, a girl named Zena arrived. She was older than most of the other kids and didn't say much. Her parents said she loved climbing but hadn't been able to try since her accident. Hugo watched her study the walls of the practice gym. Then, silently, she pointed to the climbing wall. "You think you can reach the top?" Hugo asked. Zena nodded. They spent 2 days adjusting the cloud striders, making sure the knees bent just enough and the ankles could hold her steady. On the third day, Zena clipped into the safety rope, gripped the first hold, and began to climb. Whole room held its breath. She moved slow, careful. Halfway up, she paused, then kept going. Near the top, her foot slipped, but the brace caught her. She recovered, reached out, and tapped the bell at the top. The room exploded in cheers as Zeno came down smiling, her first smile since she arrived. She said only 3 words. "Worth the work." Became the motto on the workshop wall. The ripple spread. Schools called. Hospitals wrote letters. Families sent videos of children walking for the first time across kitchen floors or school stages. Each story added another layer to the dream. What Hugo built in a quiet garage had become something much bigger, an idea that walked from town to town, hand in hand with courage. Even Apex Mobility, the company that once tried to shut him down, sent a message. They offered to buy the design and give Hugo a role in their tech department. He declined politely. "I didn't build this to sell it," he said. "I built it because someone asked for help." By summer, a new building was under construction. Beside the institute, a lab where kids could design their own custom braces, paint them, and add personal touches. Tess painted hers blue with tiny yellow stars. Luis, the boy from the trials, added soccer stickers to his dot on a warm evening. Lila and Hugo stood on the institute's back deck, watching the sunset melt into the hills. "You know, Delilah," said softly, "before I met you, I thought miracles came in big, dramatic moments. But now I think they come from small things. It's like one man saying yes to one little girl." Hugo chuckled. "Miracles don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear work boots." Tess came running up, barefoot in the grass, carrying a folder full of drawings. "Look," she said, "I've got new ideas." "Already?" Hugo asked, grinning. "Always," she replied. They went inside, the lights from the institute glowing like lanterns in the night. And as Hugo sat at the table, flipping through colorful sketches of new brace shapes and bold dreams, he realized something simple but powerful. He hadn't just helped Tess walk, he had helped her believe. And now, because of that, hundreds of others were learning to believe too. The ripple had started in a storm, the broken down car and a little girl with a big question, but it hadn't stopped. It was still growing step by step, dream by dream, one brave heart at a time.